Hi, it's Frank from Mann Lake, and today I'm down here in Florida talking to Andy Miksa, one of the premier queen and queen cell breeders in the East Coast. And I just want to find out, Andy, about a little bit about your business. Tell me how you got started in it and what you primarily do.
Yeah, so how I get started in it was I'm third generation. I grew up in it. I was growing with my dad. He's pretty much the premier. He's the go-to guy to talk to about queens and as the industry standard goes. You know, everybody knows my dad's name. You know, he's been in it since the 60s, I want to say, and then once the queen industry really took off, when the mites were introduced back in the 80s, when there was a need for queens, he was there to help answer that need. Since I didn't have to go to college, I grew up in it, so right. I went ahead and started my own operation. Been working for myself for about 15 years now. And grew into this size of operation slowly and trying to learn as I go. If instead of jumping in it too fast and I fall too fast, you know, bigger you are, the faster you fall kind of thing. So now I'm in a stage where now there's a lot more input on producing a better queen.
Okay, so you're providing queens and queen cells primarily to the commercial industry.
Right. Okay. It's a little easier to work with, and they are needing this type of queen that I'm producing. You know, they make a good honey flow. The bees are there to make it, and then whenever there's no honey flow, they won't eat all the surplus honey away.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want that breed to outproduce as babies go, or baby bees. If they overproduce, then they eat all their surplus. You can't get back fast enough to feed them, you know. So,
and you supply queens to a lot of commercial,
pretty much throughout the United States. Yeah.
So between managing the bees here and your customers, it must take quite a bit of planning and preparation.
You always have
timing.
to plan ahead. If somebody wants to produce split a hive. About a month from now, I got to start now. I got to start today to produce something tomorrow, in a way.
So you're always in communication with these other beekeepers?
No, they basically just call me out of the blue almost sometimes, you know, because they don't know what they're going to look at day in and day out. One day the bees look great, next day something happened. The weather changed. They had a massive die-off. You know, the age of the bee, you couldn't tell what the age of bee was for. Then they died off.
Right.
You know, so then when the guy calls me up, hey, I ordered 1,000 cells, I don't need them anymore. You know, so now I could change gears. One guy might be having a great year and then say, hey, Andy, do you have an extra 1,000 cells for me? Go ahead. You know, I already had a cancellation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
you have to be nimble. You got to be able to communicate with these guys, have open channels. So. Right.
You know, so whenever you get that cancellation, it's not a big deal.
Right.
You just go. Find something else to do with them, and don't, you know, if you can't predict the weather they're going to have, that you can't hold them to it because they need to be able to have that flexibility as well.
So tell me a little bit about your queens. What do you do, and what makes your queens so good?
So, I think that's the main focus on making a good queen is to give as much nutrition as possible, because if she's not fat from having any kind of food source at a dearth time, that's going to transition to the next hive.
So you got a lot of inputs to your queens to make them. It's not just putting them out there and letting them.
Yeah, no, you don't. You always want to feed them. You always, if they're a little bit light, you always feed more, and if they're even heavy, sometimes you want to feed a little bit, just to give that stimulation to keep that gut of the bee fat, and then she feeds the queen that fat too.
Right. So you're not breeding queens based on a specific line or genetic. You're looking just to make a good, healthy
quality queen that's going to last longer. You know, there's always going to be some failures, yes, but I'm trying to focus on making all of them really good, because the customers are trying to
be successful with their industry.
Yeah, their hives, they're trusting me to produce a good queen for their hives.
Because the success and failure of your hive starts with the queen.
Right.
So
and by the time that hive fails from a bad queen, he's already way too late in the season to produce another hive,
Right.
and he's failed at his honey flow.
Because we always know beekeeping, we're on the clock. We're always
Right,
on the clock.
right.
So, since you've got your finger on the pulse of the industry, what are you seeing as the biggest challenges to the commercial beekeeping community out there right now?
Timing on mites schedules.
Right.
They only have a small window to put a mite treatment on. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And then that brood cycle to kill all those mites. It's going to be harder and harder because there's a mite. The mites. Sorry to go off track a little bit, but you go on a mite treatment schedule. You got mites that stay out of the brood from 4 days to 11 days.
Right.
So are we killing only the 11-day cycle mites, and then now we only have 4 days outside the brood, and then they go back in. So you're missing a big window of mite treatments.
I think people don't realize the complexities of being a beekeeper in this day and age. It's not like it used to be.
Right.
So, for someone like yourself, what could Mann Lake and companies like us do to better serve you? What is it that you look to us for in this industry?
Well, the same way that the other beekeepers look to me is to be there when they need them. Basically, hey, you got 1,000 boxes, all right, I'll ship them. You know, and they, whenever their window works out, you have to be there for them.
Yep.
And you guys are. You know, a lot of times when I call up Andrew at Mann Lake in Winter Haven, he always has something, or something can be shipped somewhere else.
Right.
And it's always there in a good, timely manner. You know, most of the time. Edit. But so the
and obviously, you expect us to stand behind our products and our service to you.
Right.
It doesn't end at the sale.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times Andrew comes through on that too. It's like, hey, this showed up bad from the shipment or something, and all right, send it back to me, or I'll ship you new ones, ship me back the bad ones, and everything works out.
Great. Well, you know, you're one of the premier guys in the queen
Try
breeding
to.
industry.
My dad. I have to live up to my dad's standard. Yeah, he made the name, and
Yeah.
I just I'm growing from that name he produced.
Yeah.
He made that. He was there for all the customers through the real hard times when you couldn't make that much money. From the almond industry wasn't there at the time.
Right.
Back in the 90s, I remember growing up, the queens. Helping my dad cage queens, he was talking about $2 queens, $3
Wow.
queens
Wow.
when we first started, and he would, when I find a queen that was 25 cents, he would give me. You know? So yeah, living up to my dad that's been there for all the beekeepers. When I grew up eating supper, my dad was on the phone with other beekeepers. Hey Dave, what's wrong with my hives? Oh, let me walk you through it and see what's going on with them. Or Dave, I need more queen cells. Can you help me out figuring out what to do next after that?
Yeah. So it sounds like it started with your dad. It's a family tradition, and hopefully it carries
Right.
on with your kids.
Yeah,
Yep.
try to. Yeah,
So
see you.
thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.